Hey everybody, it's Robbie Moody here with RITE-HITE Marine Products. We're down here at the beautiful Toledo Bend Lake here in Manny, Louisiana. I've got our friend Tommy Martin here. Some of you guys might know him as a 1974 Bassmaster Classic champion, and getting your turret installed today. Tommy, ready to have it back?
I'm excited. That's great. Yeah, I had it on for a while, Robbie, and you know I enjoyed using it. It's a real asset to use the turret because you can position your boat and get on spot lock and sit there and scan. And I don't care if you're scanning, you know, the top of trees out in 50 foot of water, or if you're scanning in 12 to 13, 14 foot of water like we were the other day up at Table Rock. It just helps you to keep up with the fish and watch the fish, see how they act to your baits. It even gives you an idea. You know, you'll throw one bait in there and they may not respond to that bait, but we generally have 4 or 5 different baits that we catch these fish on that are in big schools out on offshore structures. And they're going to respond to one of them. But the main thing is, you know, the fish are there. You can see them, and you can see how they act toward your presentation, the way you're fishing it, and what the presentation is, and you can make changes. But this is probably the biggest innovation to come along in the whole. I've been in the fishing industry 50 years or more. And I've not seen anything that has the impact on the industry, especially if you're a bass or crappie tournament fisherman. The live scope is just just amazing. I mean, it's enabled people to catch fish and it's just the next thing out there.
It is,
and they keep improving on it. It keeps getting better.
But it's going to change.
But the turret really helps you a lot with the live scope because it even furthers your capabilities of using the live scope, in my opinion. I wouldn't fish without it. I do take it off in the spring when I'm up in shallow water, and beating around in the moss and bushes and stuff like that, because you're liable to damage your transducer. But it's a great tool.
It is. I think it's definitely got a product. It's used properly for its time. You know what? It's got a specific job, and it's good at what it does, I like to say.
Yeah.
You know, so today we're going to go ahead and we're going to finish up getting his installed and kind of take you guys along, let you show what we got going on. So what we've done here is we've opened up the nitro front panel. It's going to expose all of our wires up on the front of the boat. What we've done is we found a negative and a positive wire that's going to be able to allow us to have 12 volts of power to that turret. Once you've wired that in, you're able to go ahead, insert your inline fuse, and close up this panel. So now we've got our RITE-HITE turret. We're going to hang this here right up on our Minn Kota Ultrex here. We've got an aluminum bracket that's got countersink screw holes to make alignment easier on this, so that way one individual can do this. All right, so you're just going to line that screw up with one of the holes and get it started in. Once you got that a quarter to half the way in, you're going to want to go ahead and grab your next screw. Get it lined up and started in. Alright, once you get that started in about halfway to the quarter of the way in, you're going to go ahead and swing back to that final one. Alright, and you can go ahead and tighten this one up all the way. And work your way back through your screws, tightening them up. All right, once it's in there, kind of give it a shake and make sure it's solid. Perfect. Next, I like to go through and go ahead and add my RITE-HITE kickstand. This kickstand's a stabilizer for our RITE-HITE. You're just going to put the bigger U-joint is going to go around your Ultrex shaft or your Garmin or Lowrance shaft, and then the smaller one is going to go onto the turret shaft. Now this one is kind of tough to get in, so I recommend putting both hands on each side of the shaft and pulling down. You'll hear that snap in, and it's all set. Go ahead and put your pin back in. And then you're set. All right, next you're going to be installing the transducer. The transducer is just simply going to go on there. This is the LVS 32. So you're going to line that up with the bolt pattern. And the Garmin on the 32 has actually got the nuts in the U-bracket that Garmin makes that connects your transducer on there. So get them in there and get them all tightened up. And all that's left is to hook up the cord. All right, we got that hooked in now. Now we're going to do a little test on it. All right, we're all set up. All that's left to do after you've got everything plugged in is just cleaning up your wires. So you recommend using electrical tape on these to help with the electro current on it. I like to slide my kickstand to about halfway. Now it is important to leave a little bit of a loop right here so that way that this can rotate around that kickstand. So I recommend taping one side of it, going all the way left, all the way right, figuring out your loop size, and then retaping it onto there. So, and that is installing.
Tommy Martin here. I'm going to do a little video this morning on live scope. You know, live scope is probably the biggest innovation to come along in the fishing industry in many, many years. As long as I've been in it 50-something years and I haven't seen anything any bigger. There are more questions about live scope than you can imagine. People are always wanting to learn, and I'm no different. I've been studying it. I've used mine for 3 years. I've tried different things with it. I've started out with my transducer on the shaft of my trolling motor, and that was okay. But after I found out about the turrets, RITE-HITE makes a turret that you can actually put your transducer on that has a remote control, and you can stationary your boat with spot lock on your trolling motor and stay in one place, and you can move your transducer around with this little foot pedal that we have here on the RITE-HITE unit. And you can actually move that around, and you can keep up and scan and find these fish and see what they're doing and where they're going. And then most importantly, you know, it's just important to know that you're around fish. Before, when we were fishing, we'd be out on the lake and we just hope we were around fish, make a few casts to find out. But now we know when we're around fish when you're using live scope. But when you cast different baits in there, like a plastic worm or a jig or a big spoon or a swim bait or a medium-sized crankbait that'll get down about 15 foot, you can see how these bass react and respond to those baits, and it'll tell you pretty quickly if they're if they show a lot of interest in that bait, or if you can catch one or entice them into striking. But you know, all the innovation we have today, you want to look at this turret though. It's something that really enhances your live scope. It enables you to do so many things that you can't do with just the transducer on the shaft itself. But you know, there's a lot of questions going around now. I see them every day on Facebook. Everybody has questions about live scope, and I have the Fishing Intel channel, and those of you that are members of my website, you can view this information. This video will be up on the website probably in the next 2 weeks. We'll have it up, and y'all can look at it. And I'm going to continue to do videos every other week or so about live scope and try to answer a lot of the questions for you that you have. And remember, like I said, I'm still learning too. I don't know everything. I'm not an expert, but I am learning, and I've learned a great deal about them. And It's just something that if you're a bass tournament fisherman or a crappie tournament fisherman, live scope and this turret that RITE-HITE builds, they're in Purdy, Missouri. It's just a must-have. You need one. You know, one of the biggest questions out there is probably how do you identify what species of fish you're seeing on your live scope, and that's hard. You know, what I can tell you to do is if you're going to get good at live scope, get out on the water with once you get everything functioning properly, get out on the water and spend a lot of time using it. But I've learned where I feel very confident that I can tell what species of fish I'm looking at. Now let me tell you what, in my opinion, the way the fish look on the depth finder when they're in the water column and you see them on that live scan. You know, bass tend to sprinkle out along the bottom, maybe 2 or 3 foot off the bottom, and they won't be stacked on top of each other. They'll be sprinkled out along the bottom, maybe for 10 yards or so, and there may be 8 or 9, 10. Sometimes you find a mega school that'll have 25 or 30 or more in it, things like that. But shad, you know, now shad, that's a good thing to see on your live scope, because shad will be up in the water column near the surface, somewhere maybe 15 foot down over 25 foot of water. They'll be suspended, and they'll be in round balls, just balls. Shad just group up in a real tight bunch. You can't help but to identify shad. Crappie, when you go to a brush pile, now all those, you can determine crappie too by the size of the blip that you're looking at. Will determine crappie, separate crappie from bass to some extent, but crappie group up real tight too in that brush and right on top of the brush and all the way down through the brush pile. Brim will kind of be to the outside of the brush pile, and they'll be much smaller. They're pretty easy to identify. But one thing I do when I find a school of fish on my live scope, I always have a little 1/4 ounce spoon tied onto one rod, little 1/4 ounce silver spoon, you know, just a small one, a jigging spoon. And I'm going to drop that spoon down in that school, and you'll figure out what's down there pretty quick, because if it's Gasper goo, which a lot of these schools that you're seeing today out here on the lake are drum, freshwater drum. We call them Gasper goo, but that's what you're looking at. It may be white bass. It could be barfish. There's a lot of barfish that you'll see, but they're real small. They're like brim. They're pretty much the size of brim. But the more you look at that live scope and the more you fool with them, and if you'll take that little spoon and drop it down there and see what you're catching, if you don't catch any black bass, move on. I'll throw a plastic worm at them first. If they don't hit a worm, I'll drop that little spoon down there and shake it a few times. I start catching those goo and white bass, I get out of there. Go find another school of fish. But the more you play with it, the more time you spend out on the water, it's just like fishing's always been. More time you spend out there, the more you're going to learn.